Our show wouldn't exist without you listening. But if you want more information on how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or just to stay in touch, go to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there. Welcome back, everybody. You know what we do here now at Flipping the Lid, and our guest today is one who's willing to jump into her story just like the prior guests of our past. We got connected to her through one of our other guests, Dr. Lisa Folden, and when I asked her at the end of our interview, what badasses do you know? This was the very first person that came to her mind, soul, and consciousness. And in the time that I've gotten to know Erayna, it's really amazing because what you can notice is that she has not only in her own life been able to move through so many obstacles and challenges and to alleviate the feeling of burnout, disconnection, isolation, and just complete fatigue and exhaustion and disconnection with life by finding ways to navigate through that for herself and now empowers so many others to do the same. Someone who's taken education to the highest of high levels. But what you'll see real time as we unpack this interview, how real she is. Erayna, I'm happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited, anxiously excited for our conversation, but definitely excited to be a part of it. So thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. So I don't ask the same questions typically on this show, but by this time it's become enough of a pattern that this is probably going to be my first question always. And so you're gonna hear this. So I introed you based on how I've experienced you, how I see you, the little bits of bio that I thought were relevant, at least in this moment, right? But I really wanted to feature more of who you are. And, you know, what I didn't acknowledge, even though it's real in our conversations, is that you're a mother and you're a wife. And there's a lot of other pieces that are who you are beyond what you do. And so if you wouldn't mind, who are you in your words?
It's so funny when I was completing the intake form for this, I was like, oh, okay. And it's so familiar to the work that I do, but it's also just so easy to overlook and to refresh it. But I honestly am a person trying to thrive in this world and help other people do the same. As you said, I am a wife of almost 10 years. I am a mom of 14 months. I'm a Black woman of 40 years. And just who I am is someone who just figures out what needs to be done and figures out a way to do it. In this journey, I've learned to relax and let some of the control go. I have learned so much about myself. I have learned that people have been very real when they say 40 is different and parenting is different. So I'm someone who's honestly figuring it out along the way and finding the things that bring me joy and doing more of it. But it took me a while to get to this space.
Yeah. And is the case with so many, because life throws us all these curves. You know, you talk about thriving in life. What does that mean to you?
The definition of thrive changes for me every day, but it's really a matter of doing the things that bring you joy more often than not. It's funny because that just came out, but it's more often than not, it's not a matter of all the time. Like you still have to life and still have to adult, and there are things you're just going to have to do. But how can you get the balance leaning more in the face of things that are actually enjoyable and you want to do? Recognizing there's so much stuff you have to, and it's having the energy and excitement and community, honestly, to do those things and keep pushing forward. That is a very organic way I would describe thrive versus trying to come up with a definition.
Well, I think that's pretty beautiful. You know, one of the exercises I've actually challenged a lot of people to do often is to just create two lists, right? And those lists are combined of all the people, places, sources of information, things that we consume, activities that we participate in, right? That light us up, that give us love, that give us joy, that give us connection, that we could be there for 8 hours and it felt like one. Like we can't wait to see those people again, can't wait to get in that room again, like all these pieces, right? Because everybody knows what that feels like, right? And that's kind of what you're saying, right? So we know these lists, and I tell people, just write a list of all those people, places, sources of information, and then write a counter list, right? All the places, people, sources of information, things that you do, places that you consume that leave you feeling defeated, depleted, unworthy, disconnected, that 1 hour feels like 8 because you're banging your head against the wall and you can't even begin imagining going back there again the next day. And it amazes me how few people have ever put intention into actually looking at the percentage of their life that they're living in one state or another. Yet that is your definition of thriving. You clearly have to understand the perspective, because the only way you can speak about this is with contrast. Contrast is where everything in life exists, right? Which means that you've been there. You've looked at both sides. You've seen how that's been evaluated. And so
Yeah.
give me some perspective to when in your life you stopped experiencing joy, and how did you start to rediscover it?
That's a great question. And the way you talk about lists is absolutely how I started in this journey of helping people with burnout and burnout relief. So I am a business person. Like I'm always thinking about work. I'm always coming up with strategy. Like that's just what I do. And so, I mean, I got my MBA to check that box with it as well. And then when I was dealing with burnout, like 6 years ago, when all of this wonderfulness started, and I couldn't find the support that I knew I needed, I was like, okay, how would I approach it? And I did that exact thing of making the list. It was a matter of reflecting on my life and career and writing down the things that brought me joy in my past, looking at the things that I wanted to do and I knew would bring me joy. So it was especially focused on like work for me and unpacking why I was feeling unsettled from the workplace. And so I was looking at like, what are the experiences I want to do? I'm like, okay, I would love to go, I always say it wrong, but I would love to go to cons. I would love to win some awards from a marketing standpoint, even for my startup. I would love to have different types of experiences that got me into rooms and partnership with like luxury wellness brands and other wellness partners, so on and so forth. And then I was looking at what I've been doing for those past few years. And I was like, oh, no wonder this is horrible. I had had so much of my career that was focused on pricing and promotional strategies. What's the next banner ad? Those things, I was in Excel so much, my eyes were crossing, but I thrive in the space of innovation and making something new and just learning, honestly. Like I thrive in learning, and I was missing that. And so it was truly at the point of having to solve burnout relief for myself or find burnout relief for myself that I did that exact thing. And it was really in essence to find my joy again, because I had lost it and I no longer knew what would bring it there. Because I was like, as I said, I was an MBA. And when you come out of MBA, like regardless of which discipline you're under, you have somewhat of a path. And so I was marketing. It was like, oh yeah, so you want to ultimately become a CMO at some point at some leading CPG or blah, 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 blah. And over time that evolved, and I worked at the biggest food company in the world, and then I went to midsize, and then I went to an early stage startup, and then I was like, let's try tech. And in that, I was like, where am I going now? And it was because of this internal shift of what brings me joy, or what were my goals, some of what was my values. And so that is something, to your point, like I hadn't done that in forever. Like I was using the playbook of the career path that I'd chosen, and I hit a point where I was like, this isn't the right playbook anymore, and I don't know what it is. How do I figure out which one to pick up? I need to reassess what brings me joy. So it was a long-winded way, hopefully, to answer your question.
No, I mean, I appreciate it, because you embedded a whole lot in there, and you know, it certainly gave some context to what your process was. You know, it's interesting because I resonate and identify with lots of what you said, but obviously through a totally different lens. But, you know, I, for so long in my life, chased all the what's of the world because that's what I believed we needed to do. What house, what car, what amount of money, right? In this case, what's interesting is even listening to you talk and reflect, you're very clear on the what's, right? The strategies and the tactics, the shifts, the what's brought you things of joy. But what's also really interesting is even taking it back to the very first question I asked you, right? It's almost like it caused you to lose who you were, but you've been in search of who you are again. And it's easy for us as individuals to put it on the external and the strategy and the tactics. But really what you're talking about in what brings me joy is what authentically brings me the energy, the light, the love, the conviction to be able to do all the things that I need to do, because life is going to have moments of darkness. And so I'd like you to answer that question slightly differently, if possible.
Good.
How has the process of rediscovering who you are been for you? And how far down that path do you feel you are, recognizing there's no final destination?
Yep. You said bring your authentic self. So I'll say it was uncomfortable as hell. Like, it was the worst shit ever. I often say it was trash. And
well, you know, that's honestly what we do in our world. We deal with the trash from people's past, so that resonates. Exactly. And often, I mean, you probably are like hearing it firsthand, like it's that trash that causes the transformation. It's
even though you can transform and end up where you want to be without such pain, like there's a lot of lessons in it. You just got to pay attention
every time,
all the time. And you're like, what? But it was uncomfortable. Is truly what this journey has been. It was unexpected. But it's one of the most frustrating things for me in the work that I do in this space and these type of things is it's so common. Like we are so quick to not discuss the things that are the most common between humans.
Yes.
Because it's so uncomfortable and the vulnerability that comes with it and realizing even when you don't know. So that was a large part of it. But the other thing is that I still, like my body still reacts to the concept and language around like finding yourself again. Like now we're getting real. That's some white people shit. Like that, we don't have the luxury of doing that. Like, and I think that that's the interesting transformation that's going on in culture nowadays is that the multicultural base is finding, refining, defining, whichever word you want to use. It's a matter of taking more control of your conversation and of your being. And so for me, it was eye-opening to realize how much I didn't have control. So yeah, it's a lot of emotions. Now that I'm at this stage of the journey, what stage is it? I don't know. It's the uncomfortable stage before I jump, which I guess this is also part of that jump. Because I don't know what you're going to ask me, but
it's beautiful. No, and I mean, even the way that you answer that question, I'm really grateful that you took it there. Right? Because even what you just said is, white people shit, right? There's lots of privilege that exists in the world, and there's lots of woohoo, fluffy bullshit that exists as well. And I'm also very cognizant of the fact that I'm a white male and all the privilege that's associated with that, right? Like I am deeply, deeply passionate about the fact that I happen to be in a position that I can have some authority just simply because of my existence and how the world views my external self. There's a fact to that, right? That I believe, that I know, that I own. What's interesting is when I ask in this process of rediscovering who you are, what I believe, by the way, is that it's not white people bullshit, because here's the reality. The world has told you and many people that you identify with the way that they need to show up in the world for them to be accepted and not ostracized, criticized, judged, isolated, disconnected, whatever the case may be, right? And so as a result of a lot of these external narratives, what happens is we get armor to protect ourselves. And that armor disconnects us from who we authentically are. And so, though I don't mean it through the lens of the woohoo elements of it, I can tell you definitively, having worked with many people of color as well, that often is where some of their trash is tied, depending on how they grew up, what it was connected to, and where in their current state of life they are today. And so I'm so grateful that you took it in the direction that you did to be as real as you were, because that's something that I actually even appreciated in the way that you identified it. And it wasn't lost on me. You said, I'm a Black woman, right? And what you're doing is calling attention to who you are and making sure that people have to see and understand all of who you are instead of minimizing it. And the power and ownership in that authority is you standing into who you are, because just what you talked about, it's about the power of your voice and your ability to stand in your power and potential, regardless of the external factors, while recognizing that external factors create greater resistance and limitations for many people in this world in many different categories. Can we acknowledge and agree on that?
We can. It's so funny that you just called that out, because I didn't even think about identifying with it. And I would say I very rarely actually said it in the past, because to me, it's always obvious. So you can see it's actually part of my process in redefining. I mean, honestly, like I appreciate that you recognize all of the things. The big thing is that it's not a matter of it was white people shit because it was safe for white people. It was very unsafe for everybody else to do it.
I got that. I 1,000% received it for what you meant. And that's why I was talking about the privilege and everything else and all of it. Okay. Yep. So that's how I read it, but that's why I was further explaining the other perspective with a little context from my lens, because I think we're saying the exact same thing.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we're saying the exact same thing. And it was beautiful how you said it. I was wanting to make sure it was accessible for everyone to reach what I knew your heart was communicating.
Thank you.
And it's just the truth, right? It's just the truth. I mean, here's the reality. I can tell you, yes, as a white male who also happens to be type A and an alpha in many cases, there are situations that I don't have perspective on. But I do know that through my own personal experience, I don't know how well you know my story or whatever it is, I also know what it's like to be the only person in the room. I know what it's like to be stared at, judged, criticized, minimized, put into boxes.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I understand it through every person's lens. I don't understand the depth of it as it relates to the color of my skin and the identity of who I am, but I wear mine every single day.
Yeah.
Right? My arm is obvious every single day. There's certain things of it that it's given me perspective to understand and at least create those moments that do connect us through the human experience, though they're different because of the perspectives. Yep. They're actually always the same too. Yeah. We all feel the same thing.
Yep. I agree. I think it's people who have felt othered at some point for some reason can have a deeper level of empathy. And I'm sure there's a study and theories that prove it, but I'm like, I think that's, yep.
I believe it to be true. And so, and that unites us because we do all understand the pain, the emotion, the struggle, the disconnection, the isolation. Every one of us has felt that. Yeah. And so, as you talk about moving through this process, reconnecting with who you are, and you're discovering all these pieces, where have you felt least seen in your life?
Can you give me some additional context?
I believe that the world doesn't judge us based on our intent. It always judges us based on our actions. But often we're in a position where we feel something because someone didn't understand our real intent because of wherever it came across or however we looked or however any situation, right? So if we all desire to be seen and understood and connected, right? One of the greatest disconnections is when we don't feel seen and understood.
Yep.
Where in your life have you felt the greatest disconnect where you have not been able to be effectively seen for who you believe you are and your intent?
So funny. I fully am understanding the flipping the lid part because of what just came to mind. One of the first thing that comes to mind is actually one of my first job after B school, and it was great. Like, it was actually one of the better job experiences from a matter of what I was able to do, the roles, the experiences. Like, I literally got paid to go eat a lot of the time. That was my research, and I am a hell of a foodie. And in that experience, in consumer packaged goods, from a brand management standpoint, like, there's a track. And there's a track that is like what you're supposed to do if you're an MBA with marketing. That in the past, that was, if you go consumer packaged goods, you want to go up this ladder and you really want to be in what's called like base brand management, which is more general management, which is you are the one who can, in a sense, like run the business, because brands and big companies are an entire business in themselves. And that brand team does everything. Like, where's it sold? What's it priced? What's the ad look like? What are the products coming out? So on and so forth. And so the expected path is to move up and to take on more responsibility, more general management. That's not who I am, nor how my brain works. I can do it because I'm been trained to do it with my schooling and just my experience, but I am more innovation. I like to come up with stuff out of nowhere. I want to get deep to the customer need. I want to do interviews. I want to do concepting. I want to do ideation sessions. And so I was at this point in my career where I'd been in base for a couple of years, and I was looking at the next thing. I was no longer excited about the work I was doing because I was just in the weeds in Excel, and I was like, no. And there was a role in innovation, and I was like, I want to move to that role. And I kept getting feedback that it was not the best career move because innovation ends up being somewhat of a dead end, because ultimately in these orgs, as much as they say they value innovation, it's to a certain point. And so that was where, in hindsight, like truly this has been a part of my unpacking in the past few months, is those were moments where I didn't feel seen because my heart knew what I wanted. I knew where I thrived. I knew where I added the most value. And just because I could do this doesn't mean I should. And I jumped. I still went to innovation, and I got that role, and it was actually some of the best projects I've ever had. But it was still like viewed somewhat as a ding on my internal like eval of like, well, if it's this path, if this is what she wants to do, then I don't know if she can make the way out to this. And there was one other experience in the same company, like I was looking at an international position because it was honestly one of the coolest shits ever. It was like a global consultant where you can go to the offices around the world and consult internally. And coming from like senior leadership was like, that's actually a step back, because in other parts of the country, that's like viewed as this, but in the US, it's viewed as this. And it was just, I actually did not pursue that role, partially because of that and partially because of personal reasons. But it was just like, if that's who I am and what I want to do, who are you to stop me? Like,
right.
So those, I hadn't thought about those in a while, but like those are moments where I didn't feel seen, and has taken me a while to recognize that those things were actually superpowers, just not recognized within the current environment. I think that actually speaks to some of the like new conversation around neurodivergence and what's valued in org. I got ADHD, and it's like, oh, people with ADHD are hyper creative and hyper innovative. Let me go do that shit. Like, do you want to make money? Because if you let me do what I wanted to do, the company I was like the projects that I was working on, we would have established like at-home meal kits. I was working on a project with that 3 years before like So there's one of the spaces.
Isn't that incredible though? How much so many elements of us can be stifled because we chase opportunity, and even when there's misalignment, not everybody, one, recognizes it, and two, has the ability to stand in it. You know, it sounds like in each one of those cases, you were pretty vigilant in advocating for you as best as you were able, as soon as you were able, to put yourself into the positions to allow yourself that same freedom. But, you know, to that same extent, I started to believe I wasn't even a creative person because of how much I was stifled, because of how much I was hiding behind it. And, you know, creativity is the flow of life, right? And it's expressed in so many different ways. And so I appreciate you going there, because what you just even highlighted is something that leads directly to burnout. Because if you are not aligned in your role around the things that bring you joy, or are in alignment with some of your greatest gifts and skill sets, right, you can't actually get yourself moving. And I know that for myself, again, because I was hidden behind so much armor and hiding for so long, nobody could understand my energy before. So everybody thought I was an asshole and a dick and arrogant and not able to like actually move through. But I'm sitting here like, no, like, you don't know my heart. Like, right. And I didn't know that my edge was delivering a message of energy that wasn't consistent. And so how do you believe you were given the ability to identify the misalignment and to have the ability to advocate for yourself as quickly as it sounds like you did in multiple situations?
Quickly.
Quickly is all perspective, right?
Well, you're not actually wrong, bro.
Well, it sounded like it was quick based on how you said it. Yeah.
It was. I hadn't thought about these moments though. One quick thing is that you're absolutely right. Like what you were saying about how you were showing up and how it could be like bristly, those are actually signs of later stage burnout. So people often end up in that. And in all of my work and reflection, I'm like, I think back about people I've worked with and myself at different moments. And I'm like, oh, that was burnout. That was burnout. That was burnout. That was extended burnout that turned into some other shit. Like just looking at in the past, it's like, oh yeah, because the equation was off. And now I have the know-how to recognize it coming, and I can stop it, or I can figure out how to mitigate it, or I can lessen the impact. Because big thing in my work is like, we're not going to eliminate burnout. Like, are we going to, unless we officially burn all the shit down and get rid of capitalism, it's just something that happens when you want to perform. And it's very hard to gauge when you're giving too much, especially when everyone's asking for a lot. But how was I able to do it? Honestly, there's some, I don't know, but there's something like, I guess I have to own, there's something in me that just knows when the shit is wrong. So I grew up very blue collar. I'm the baby of 3, and I had the opportunity to just watch people. And I remember one of the, that's so funny. I hadn't thought about this, but like, as you're like recognizing it and changing it, when the first thought I had when I went to college, I was actually a declared engineer. So from like, I was just smart as a kid. So from like 6th grade through 12th grade, I was doing summer programs, like after school programs. It's a cool thing in Detroit called DAPSEP, Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program. So I was always in school, and it was fun because, you know. And so I was going to college and I was going to be an engineer. First it was computer and then, or it was chemical. And then I switched schools because of the scholarship. And I was like, okay, I'll do computer. And you know, back in the day, we were really cool if you knew how to code a website. And I was like doing HTML code. Dork. Should have.
I love it.
Now fast forward. Should have kept that skill. But
don't shit on yourself though. Come on, that's a shame-based word. It implies whoever you were, whatever you did wasn't good enough. You didn't for a reason. If you want to pick it up now, you still can, by the way.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, see, so you're over it.
Yep, right. You're absolutely right. It was the wrong. I was just early. There was no product management at that time. So, but in that, I was a computer engineer for like 2 years. And one day I was just like, I don't want to do this. And I reflected on my family. I was like, my dad works in the plant a lot. And I just was like, I'm not trying to do a job forever and be miserable about it. Like, I cannot do this. Work takes up so much of my life. I cannot do it. And so I went to career services and I was like, this is what I'm doing. This ain't it, but I don't know what. And so that is how I found my path into like marketing, PR, communications, and all that type of stuff. But I don't know. It's just something at some point I just get, and it's probably you've heard this, but you get so uncomfortable that you're like, some shit has to change. And I just have enough faith that I'll be okay. That I don't know where I'm going, but I go get some support and figure out how to get to the next stage.
Yeah, I called attention to it because, there are lots of people who will get into a place where they feel the misalignment, but they don't pay attention to it, right? Or they intellectually decide that they're going to push through for some variety of reasons. I did the same thing. I chased success based on my old definition of success, based on how the world defined it for me, and I got it. But I woke up empty and miserable, right? And so there's a lot of that is so true. And I appreciate the fact that you're saying, well, yeah, I just know it. But I think the difference between you and many people, I think most know it. They feel it. If they actually are honest with themselves and they pay attention to those moments of resistance and feel it and pay attention to it and unpack it and analyze it, the difference between you and many people is you refuse to sit in that for very long. And it looks as if you then start asking the questions on how to bring it back by taking action and creating movement. And so that's what I really want to highlight is that, to your point, burnout never goes away. It's going to cycle time and time and time again, but it doesn't have to look the same way it always did. And you even said that your equation changed. I know that my equation has changed over time too. Mine used to be stress equals growth, right? And there's a whole lot of shit that goes into that, right?
Yep.
But that's not my definition anymore. I would love to know, how do you define success? And then how do you define this process?
That's funny. Success, you sound like my therapist, from what I've been processing. Big things for success for me, freedom is big for me. Freedom of thought, experiences, and flexibility, honestly, is a big part of it. Financial stability, and just being able to be proud of what I'm doing. And I realized that I was like reserving celebration for big things, and the big thing, like recognizing the successes the wins along the way, helped me recognize like I was on that journey to success, even though I might be not at the final destination, or honestly not even really knowing what the final goal was. So that's what comes to mind when I think about success. But
and what's your new equation then? That's what I was meaning the question to be. I think I asked it differently, but I'm trying to get back to the equation because you said my equation changed. So I want to know what it used to be and what it is now.
Oh, well, if we think about, I hadn't thought about it in that way. The one that is just top of mind that I always talk about, like when we think about equation, I don't know exactly how to answer your question.
That's fair.
There, but like everyone talks about work hard, play hard, that type of thing, and that's often the equation we're taught. And in this journey, I changed the equation. I actually use it in my business a lot of work hard, self-care harder, because I got the work hard right. I knew that shit, and I tried to play hard, but I'm like, it's not. Playing isn't the only thing. It's that self-care. And so in the work I do, I talk a lot about the 4 pillars of mental wellness and what those are, because play is only one of the pieces. And so I guess that's the answer. My equation is went from work hard, play harder, to work hard, self-care harder. And that is what I live by.
I love that.
So,
I love that. Like I said, my old equation used to be stress equals growth. It's now stress plus rest equals growth, which essentially is the downtime, the integration, the self-care. It's the same thing. You know, it is interesting because there's a book that I read that actually outlined and it mocked multiple high performers across business, athletics, and sport. And what they found is that and they looked at intermittent peak performers and sustained peak performers, those that reached the top of their game once and those that did it for decades, right? The singular difference in the two was that the sustained high performers actually scheduled their rest and recovery as important as any part of their training or work.
Yes. I just was talking to one of my advisors about this exact thing. We talk a lot about resilience, endurance, and all these things, and the stressless rest. That's like, that's you're on to that's a huge theory. So yes, we're on the same page, and that is definitely something to live by. We look at stress so much, and like, I feel like you definitely work in this space. Like, people view everything so binary, and that's one of the biggest problems in this world. Because stress does equal rest to a certain point. And it's like, what's that threshold? And how do you manage it? You add in the rest into the equation. So yeah, you're speaking my language.
Yeah, girl, we're having fun together. This is going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to where this relationship goes in general, because I love your vibe. I love the way you show up in the world. And I like to think I'm one of those dope people that you get to hang out with, that you're always seeking for. So that's amazing. No, but literally everything you just said is real. It's all real. And I've experienced it, and I definitely understand it on the other side of it. So, on this whole idea of rest, right?
Really?
I love your nickname, Chill Sargent, right? Like, it rolls off the tongue. It's amazing. So I'm curious, where did that come from for you, that literal term? And how do you explain our need to chill in a society where many people believe that's just being lazy?
Yeah, that's funny. So the name came from my next door neighbor. Actually, a few months ago, I went through a rebranding. So when I started this journey, I didn't really have a name. And then like in 2020, I think is the official time I started going by the Burnout Whisperer, which right on the nose for me. Because I can often listen to someone, and it's not a matter of diagnosing because they already know they're burned out, but I can help them identify where the problem areas that they should start and get support. Yep. And so that's what I do. And so Burnout Whisperer was part of my journey until December of 2022. I shifted, or maybe it was January. And there were a couple reasons. One, basically a little crowded, and I didn't have the capacity over the past few years to own it in the way that I could. And then it just came organically through my next door neighbor. She was just like, has she ever thought about the name Chill Sargent? Just because it's dope and my last name is Sargent?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
Had no idea. And I realized that what I was doing was, burnout is the thing that I help with, but it was so much bigger than that. It's a matter of just like figuring out how to chill out and whatever it will take to get there. So truly resting is a big part of it. But it's also the other elements of like connecting, relaxing in other ways other than resting, playing, community. All of those things are part of just chilling. And it's like, I just need y'all to chill out. Like,
yes.
I find myself in a lot of relationships, professional and personally, like I just end up being someone's accountability partner for fun. Like my whole Hooky Day campaign is just a way for people to give them permission to sit the fuck down. Like that's all we need, is to give ourselves permission, because we all know we need it, but it's so hard to do it. So it's like Chill Sargent. I know what I mean? It's just cool.
Yeah.
But that's how I ended up there. It's just more fun. I get so upset about the space of mental health and wellness and personal development. It feels so like apologetic. And it shouldn't be. So I was like, how do I make it more fun, bring some levity, and just like, it's just part of life. So yeah that's how Chill Sargent came to be.
It's interesting though, because even as you're talking about that, this bringing some levity to a topic that really is trying to be normalized, but in so many toxic ways, right? There's so much shame and blame that exists in our society in like every category, right? And to your whole point, like it's never in the binary nature, but that's typically where people exist, right? Because it's easy to, and it's easy to feel safe and protected when you're around people that see the world the same way you do, and to justify that I don't need to seek other perspectives as a result of it, right? And it all integrates in everything we're even talking about right now, right? Like even the identification of changing my own relationship with my energy, my stress, my emotions allowed me in many situations where I would feel anxious or stress, and I would identify it with that label.
Yep.
But if I really pared myself down and physiologically paid attention to what was going into my body, what was actually paying attention to, like, what am I reacting to in the moment, then many times what I found is that it's not actually stress or anxiety, it's energy waiting to be deployed. Right? And that's not always the case. I'm talking about a very specific set of what this looks like. But even the shift of chill and just chill in life to get people to understand, like, it's okay to just take a breath for a minute is really beautiful, because burnout, right, is pain. Now, one of our core concepts is embrace pain to avoid suffering. I talk about trash. I'm known as the garbage man, but one of my old monikers is I'm a heart surgeon without a blade. So when you talk about the shift in identities and like external branding, it's all a part of you, because you're still going to be the burnout whisperer, but people are going to be able to access you in a different way because of what you're actually marketing towards, which is their ability to integrate effectively in their life. You talked about balance. And what I'd really like to understand is I actually don't believe in balance in life. Like, I don't believe in it. I believe in integration. And I believe that if you are intentional, aware, and aligned, that you can integrate all of the things that are important to you in your life. Doesn't mean it's always easy. Doesn't mean that it's all going to work out well or timing's right for everything to explode. But it is possible for you to feed all the areas that you want to put energy towards. I'm curious, if you don't believe in balance, what is your definition? What is your belief? And how long have you been living in that?
I've been living in it, I would say 2.5 years, just because it's part of the work and it was forcing me to figure out what did I want and what did it mean to me. So I don't like the word balance, because just by nature of the definition, and it says that something is right or wrong, it's like the correct correct allocation of different things in your life, and there's no correct. And as someone who has had a lot of changes in life, I realized like everything is situational, and that ties in with burnout. Like, burnout is situational. What might burn you out here may not burn you out there. It has to do with all this stuff. And so I am a champion of the word harmony, because when you think about music, like, music is different, and sometimes it's very mellow, and sometimes it's just brown noise and doesn't really exist, and sometimes it's super upbeat. But the thing is, there's harmony within each of it. And even if you're listening to jazz with some like random staccato that no one else, like my ear, does not fully appreciate, to someone else they might be like, no, I'm good, that's harmony. And that is how I look at life. Like, so often people have looked at me and my husband and been like, how in the world are y'all? And there's just a level of pace and tempo that we're like, I mean, we're sort of used to it. Like, we're domestic nomads, I call us. We are tired of moving, but like, in the past 13, we went from Indiana to Cleveland to Chicago, Cleveland, Chicago, San Francisco, Kansas City, Charlotte.
Wow.
Yeah. And sometimes we were together, sometimes we were apart, and we're doing this and starting over and doing all the things. And people are like, I don't understand. But to us, that was our harmony. That was our rhythm at that point in time. Now, a lot more subdued, because some other things started going wacky. So we had to find harmony in other parts of our life. So I like harmony. It's also a lot more fun of a metaphor to think about. And like, you're like, this is a drums period of time, or like the horn is about to start squeaking. Like, what's going on? But it allows you to recognize your pace, your used to be balanced. Your harmony is not necessarily what everyone else will want, need, or appreciate. And it may change. So yeah, I use harmony. That's my new definition.
I like harmony. I think that's beautiful. And I mean, there is a harmony to life, especially if we allow ourselves to hear it. And, it's funny, even something as simple as I got a voice note from someone earlier, and it turned into a joke, but they had about 6 seconds at the end of their conversation where all I could hear was birds in the background. Right. Ooh. It was harmony. It was beautiful. And I like responded back and was like, hey, thank you so much for the grace, but I really appreciated the extra 6 seconds at the end that I just got to hear birds. And she goes, I promise it had nothing to do with my inability to use my phone. And it was like, right. But it was like, it was just still cool, because I could have looked at that as like, oh, they forgot to shut off the phone, but I didn't. I listened and I heard the birds singing. Right.
That's
which
cool.
Told me that she was outside. She was feeling connected. She was in a warm place. And it was actually pretty interesting because, again, there's a harmony to everything. As we were talking, a quote came back into my mind that actually relates to a prior conversation. So I'm going to do a hard shift back, and I'm giving you the warning on that, because this quote, I really want to bring out into existence and talk about it for a second. The late Reverend Vivian, who marched with Martin Luther King, used to say, unless you look in the mirror and see a person of color every morning, you have no idea what it's like to be challenged by race.
You have no idea to be challenged by what?
You have no idea what it's like to be challenged by race.
Ooh. Okay.
I have two questions for you.
Yep.
And I don't ask you to represent anybody other than yourself on this opinion. I'm just genuinely curious. Two things.
Yep.
One, you all told us who you are, but who do you see when you look in the mirror every morning? And second, I believe there's a lot of truth to that quote. A lot of truth. We talked about that. I said there's certain things I will never have perspective on, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we as a society better foster perspectives to allow people to have a greater understanding of something that they might not ever have the direct opportunity to understand?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was close to saying, I don't know if you will, but we have to. I don't actually. Answering this question on an academic theoretical level is above my pay grade and not and outside of my.
That's why I'm asking you to answer it only on you, my friend.
Yeah, from a personal experience, I don't know if that's really what you need to do. Like, part of it is, I think there's a large part in just recognizing that your perspective isn't the only one. Like, I think that's the point.
So
like,
fucking powerful, Erayna. I'm so happy you answered it that way.
Thanks. I'm like, I can't necessarily understand exactly what it's going to be like to be so and so, but I'm like, I know it's different than what I am. So there's a truth that I don't know. It's hilarious, not how funny, but like there were two moments in the past week of conversations that I had with my husband that like really made this top of mind. One, our backyard lines up to an expressway, and the impact that it had on our house appraisal is one thing. We could talk about that offline. It's very annoying.
Yeah,
but the insight, like the other day, it just hit me. I was like, it's funny. I was like, there's like hundreds of cars going by a minute, and every single one of them are in a different world that we have no idea of what they're experiencing. I was like, that's nuts, because we were talking about our shit, and it was like, huh. So that was just one point of reflection. And then yesterday we were talking about it. So going back on earlier where I said I went to undergrad as a computer engineer. And I don't know why it hit me, but I was like, the start of college was very different, because I went in with a list of classes I needed to take to get the degree. It's like, when you go in declared, it's like, this is what you do. Yeah. My husband was a English major, and he was like, oh, I just got to take classes. And I was like, what do you mean you just got to take, how did you figure out what to do? Like, you could just be like, that little nuance is massive in how you sort of like view the world and how you approach the world. So my mind also works in dissertation. So I'm always like, someone should write about this. Someone should do a dissertation. Because I'm like, what is the correlation of people who go into college as a declared major versus undeclared and their future career satisfaction? Like, how does that play in? Because if you go into college with a declared major, like, you don't get to explore as much. So,
well, and the reality of it is typically a declared major, especially when there's a consistent group of people, only fosters a more competitive environment as it relates to what's happening, which perpetuates the separation because of the performance metrics of people receiving love, validation, and connection through performance, right? So there's all these other factors that come into that. I want to add one additional context to your answer, which, by the way, again, I think was perfect. So when I say additional, it's additive, not to change anything, because I loved what you said. People have to be willing to accept that there is another perspective. But I think it's another piece to that. I think people need to be willing and open to not just accepting that there is another perspective, but that other perspective is another person's actual truth. Mm-hmm. Because understanding alternative perspective without understanding the person that's behind it, what it's connected to, and the truths that means for them is also dissolving that actual situation, because perspective doesn't have context, nuance, understanding. It has to be willing to accept that if you tell me this is your perspective, I might challenge only because of who I am and how I see the world, but it would never be to challenge your belief system. It would be to test congruence in that belief system. But many people don't even accept it as truth. Yeah.
That's interesting. I do believe I agree with most of it. And like everything, there's always nuances. I think the complication comes in is the universal facts that go across all perspectives And sometimes people's truths make them deny facts. And it's like, but
Fact.
no. Like, that doesn't match. But that's why it's messy.
Yeah, I 100% agree. But again, I think that's it's also the detachment from right or wrong, good or bad, right? To your whole point, it's not about the black and the white. The gift is in the gray area. It's always in the middle in some case. That's always where it exists.
Yep.
You are just a fascinating individual. And I really appreciate how you've shown up already for us today. I'm really curious. You have like an extreme love for interior design. How do you express your creativity through the way you design your environment?
It took for us to be deep into this home renovation for me
You
to
shook
remember.
that one off. You're like, man, I'm getting ready for more questions.
Yeah. Well, no, we're in phase 2 of this home reno. It started yesterday, and it's like, no, I do love interior design. It took me a while to remember and to like recognize that was something that's real. Like, as a kid, my mom bought me this computer game that was honestly like interior design, like system, and I used to do it at like 7th grade and completely forgot because I was an engineer. And so how I use that, like, one, with a big part of the business, at some point I would get back to physical spaces and physical manifestation of my vision and how I help people. So that excites me. I actually had part of my career where I worked in office space manufacturing, like office space manufacturing, worked on chairs. I can tell you way too much about chairs and cubicles and lights, but came in handy because I got to work with architects and designers. And then most recently, seriously, this home renovation. So we bought a house, like, I can't believe we actually bought it in 2021, and it was a full gut that happened throughout 2022. And so we, of course, had the engineers and the designers, but like, we designed it, we laid it out. I picked every single freaking thing. Never thought I would look at floors so often. I mean, my husband is so over it. We were talking about paint for our door yesterday. He's like, it all looks teal. I was like, but it's like 4 shades. So I literally am doing it, as well as from a less direct way. Occasionally I have to get out of the house and just get inspired by beautiful spaces and places. So I do that a lot. And if I can't create it, I just go experience someone else's creation.
Where do you typically go to get inspired?
Oh, honestly, I'm still working on that one. Walks help me a lot. I go to a lot of different coffee shops. I thankfully started to bring museums back, but like, I need a vacation. I like pretty places. I like beaches. Me for experiences inspire me. So if I get to learn or do something new, that's how I really get inspired.
Yeah. Tell us about Blend.
Wow. Blend is business leaders linked to encourage new directions. It is a nonprofit for professionals of color in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area. I started it in 2006 because I was in Grand Rapids, which is super not black. And so I wanted to go to Chicago after undergrad, and then I got an opportunity and stayed in the area. And I was like, one trip to Chicago, I went to this young professionals of color event, and I was like, what is this mecca? I was like, what?
Right.
This. And so when I realized I wasn't going to Chicago, I was like, there's enough of us here for us to get somewhat of a feeling. And so I sat on the stairs in our townhouse with my 2 roommates, and I was like, hey, I have an idea. And they were like, all right, keep us posted. We're down. We'll help. And so started Blend with 6 other people, my founding steering committee. And it's really anchored on 4 pillars: social, professional development, social engagement, and community outreach. And fast forward to today, it still exists. It's one of the leading young professionals organization in Grand Rapids, and it's like sponsored by the hospitals, the universities, some law firms. So it's my little legacy in Grand Rapids that it's funny I really talk about. Are you like the guy on Hot Ones going into my history, like bringing up stuff I forget about?
You know, I just love to be able to get to the depth of people's stories, because these are all foundational moments. And the reality of it is that's one of those things that maybe the world doesn't know as much about. Maybe you haven't allowed them to know about as much because for whatever reason, right? Shame kicks in, and sometimes it's I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And other times it's who do you think you are? I know all the major things I did. Huh?
I know for a fact why people
I'd love
don't
to
know
hear.
it's funny. It's part of this journey. I hadn't talked about it as much because when I was leading Blend is when I experienced burnout for the first time. And it was like a deep, intense burnout. And like, it was a transformational leadership moment. Like my co-chair, I remember he called me. I was at one of my jobs. I was always the one that did the most. And
of course you were.
Like,
yeah.
I was like, I was still in school. No, I had just graduated, but like I worked at Red Lobster. I worked at Macy's. I started the nonprofit and I was on a board of another nonprofit. And then I was preparing for business school and still having a life. The problem, which is why I've learned to chill the fuck out. But he like called me and was like, yo, whatever's going on, like you're not showing up as yourself. Like, what is it? And it was my first like call to the carpet as a leader and changed who I was fundamentally as a leader and gave me the greatest awareness. But I didn't talk about it for forever. And honestly, I'm still have just started because at the end of it, it was time. And like most people who are like severe burnout, you just want to run away from it because honestly, there was shame, there was some embarrassment because I was no longer the leader or the one that should run it. And I had to pass it, and it made me not fully appreciate the impact. And like, I went to business school, which is why I left. But like at the 5-year anniversary was the most amazing thing. Like the team at that time, like put on this gala that was like a 400-seat sponsored gala. And like, I came back to that and was like the keynote speaker and was like, who's this? What is this? But yeah, honestly, people don't know about it because it was my first experience with crazy burnout. And there you go.
Thank you for taking it straight there. I mean,
now the world knows.
Well, no, but I mean, I think that's really powerful because this is also a really transformational period in your life. And what I'm curious, so I have a couple questions around this because you unpacked a lot in that little segment that I just am super fascinated by. My first question is, when you were the keynote speaker and you were there being able to witness what had been built, you're standing on that stage in front of 400 people. Did you allow yourself to fully receive it?
No. It was a matter of shock, like disbelief. I was present, like my parents were there and I can remember it clearly, but like I don't think I was ready to fully receive it. Like there's something in like I hadn't worked through the stuff I needed to work through, and like I had not understood, recognized burnout, mental health, any of that stuff at the point. So it was just part of my journey. But I know it was a big win. But I think you just gave me my next therapy session content because I'm realizing there's still some appreciation and recognition of it that I haven't fully processed.
Would you mind if I share something with you that I see?
Yes.
Okay. You do mind or you don't mind?
No, go for it.
Okay.
That's what we're here for.
The thing I want to reflect back to you on this, and it's not going to be like this deep reflection in the ways that I normally do it, but it's going to be in the context of this specific situation. You clearly felt a level of misalignment when you had to step away from it, but I also think that because it didn't get to where you wanted it to be in the time that you were leading it, you also felt like you failed and that you didn't actually create the system and platform that would create the legacy that, by the way, exists still today. And so what's really fascinating as well is that you were hurting, you were disconnected, you were burned out, but you also were in a place where you realized how isolated and alone you were and how many people you didn't have around you that looked like you and understood the perspectives that you had without you having to explain them. And that in and of itself, when you're not seen in an environment or you're the only one, can also contribute to a greater degree of burnout because you don't feel the energy and you don't feel the disconnection, and the weight of carrying the armor is going to make it worse. But here's what I want you to know. Even if it was only those 400, which it won't be because it's still going. You've given 400 people the opportunity to be deeper connected with themselves and the community that they identify with, and have ensured deeper connection, a place for them to be seen and understood, a protected and connected space that has allowed all of them to not have to operate in some of the same ways that you had to. And so you're carrying a weight for something that you no longer need to carry, because the reality of it is the work that was necessary and needed to be done which is why you were the keynote speaker and in that position. And so I would just really ask you to recognize the connection, because whether you know it or not, your experience of burnout at that time actually was creating a perpetual path to alleviate burnout for so many people entering into the workforce who didn't have a community.
That's funny. Well, thank you for that.
You were the chill sergeant before you even knew it.
I guess so. Yeah. Funny aside, as you say, I was a chill sergeant before I knew. You have no idea how real that is.
I believe it. I believe it.
5th grade or 3rd grade, Knights of Columbus spelling bee. I got out for misspelling sergeant, and I spelled it like my spelled it like my last name now, and was like, you guys just spell it stupid.
Yes.
So yeah,
that's not my truth. My truth is how I spell it. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Had no idea. Literally, we've been married like 10 years. I don't think I realized it until like 2nd year of marriage. I was like, oh my God. I really knew how to spell it right.
That's amazing. So, yeah, you were projecting into the future. That is beautiful, my friend.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, truly. And, the last thing that I would really like to ask you about that situation is, if it's not in something you've already shared, what are you still trying to forgive yourself for as it relates to your blend experience?
That's interesting. I think there's a matter of I felt like I should have done more. But in searching for the answer, my brain is already working to remind me that I did what I was supposed to do. Like, I was supposed to start it. I realized I realize a superpower. It's also one that I'm still grasping with as a freaking CEO. My superpower is to create dope shit and like set up a foundation that someone can take it and run with it. Like, it's literally what my career was in innovation. I come up with something, test it, make sure it works, and be like, go do it. And so
you haven't forgiven yourself for a narrative that's not even true to you.
True. Yeah. Well, yes. I didn't recognize it wasn't true. Like, I didn't recognize I did the job I was supposed to do. Like, I launched it. Put it in good hands. Yeah.
And I mean, you even caught yourself when you said should have. I should have done this, because the shame base implied that you didn't. And I believe, because of everything I've experienced with you, you don't give less than 100% to anything you're actually involved in.
Yeah, which is why I don't get involved unless I know I can do it. So yeah.
Bingo.
Yes.
Bingo. So that's a beautiful thing. And I just hope that you can see that, because you haven't forgiven yourself and you're carrying a weight for something that isn't actually even a truth for you in the current state. So let go of it, my friend. Start preaching it from the world. It's amazing. All right. So a couple of other things that we're going to wrap up here, because I really want people to know how to access it. And you've layered so much in here. One more actual pragmatic question. I know so many people who reach burnout also reach literal adrenal fatigue, right? The hormones in our body and the adrenals in our body do not operate the same way that they're designed to if they exist in consistent burnout and stress.
Yes.
And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you're helping people navigate the topic of burnout. But what I'd also like you to specifically highlight on is the physiological elements of the body. And how are you integrating that into the conversation for folks?
Yeah. So the work that I do with burnout is under my company, Hooky Wellness. Yes, like play hooky. That's exactly what it's about. Hooky Wellness. It's more of a mindset than a game. And so I really focus on, especially that upfront education and understanding, because if you don't have that, you don't have anything. And there's a lot of miseducation, misinformation, and honestly, sugarcoating and discounting of burnout that frustrates the hell out of me. And so just taking it all the way down to the basic level, I help especially mid-career, high-achieving professionals understand what burnout is, isn't, and what they can do about it. And in the what they can do about it is where the support for adrenal fatigue. And so I'm really about introducing them to the different mental wellness modalities and understanding behaviors and pathways that can help them. I am a champion of a couple, but I also recognize that everyone's journey is different, everyone's style is different, and the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is to understand what works for you. And so I help you understand. I jokingly say what to know better and to do better. So when it goes into what are some of those symptoms and signs, like big things to know about burnout, like that early stage you'll always hear about is exhaustion, but this isn't tired. So don't just say I'm burned out when you're tired. I'm so getting mad that everyone is just, I'm still burned out. No, you're not. Like,
hey,
you're tired, you're stressed, you're sleepy. But like if you were burned out, you would freaking know you're burned out. Like that's different. But that early stage is truly a warning flag of exhaustion. No amount of sleep helps you feel restored. Because burnout is all encompassing. It is mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion brought on by unmanaged, prolonged stress. Like it is not a acute thing. It doesn't happen in 1 week. So exhaustion is that first warning flag. Then you start to look into some of the deeper things that happen. It can manifest, as I said, mental, emotional, and physical. So unexplained aches. You're seeing an increase in like symptoms of anxiety and depression because burnout is a gateway to a lot of other things. Well, in itself, it is not a mental health condition. You can open the door and welcome everything that you might be repressing or avoiding into your life. So it can show up in some of those. It can show up in a lot of like gastrointestinal type of issues, like physical manifestations. There's really a lot to somatic health that is finally getting understood. And then all the way to cynicism, detachment, depression, PTSD like symptoms in the workplace is very real. And I felt that many a time. So
yeah, me too.
Those are some of that's like, I was like, why do I keep feeling nauseous every time I go into this meeting? Why does my
because we're taught to not listen to our bodies and to just push through no matter what. Like that's right. That's why I wanted you to talk about the physiological elements, because people know what that feels like, but they aren't like, again, it's normalized. That's how I was with stress. I told you stress equals growth. That's how I was. Guess what? Every single 9 months, I would crash and fucking burn for about a week. And then I'd run hard again for 9 to 11 months. And then I'd crash hard for a week. Right?
One week after 9 to 11 months.
Now I had a lot of, now again, I'm not saying this from a brag point. I'm saying like that was what I still was doing in that time. And I had a capacity and an energy and a drive, and I was avoiding pain and all this other shit. So reality of it is, it just, it was that pattern until I learned to get off of it. I really appreciate how you are helping people navigate this, because this does show up as so many subtle, hidden things that affect life. It does manifest in every area of our life when we're not in alignment in a mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical state. There is permeation across each other, no matter what. And burnout is one of the most damaging elements that's affecting the high performing space today, because it literally takes people away from who they are and what they want. And so I love that you are here as the Chill Sergeant, as the Burnout Whisperer. How can people find you? We'll put everything in the show notes, but what's the best place if they want to reach out to you directly?
Yes, I am most frequently on Instagram as the Chill Sergeant. I'm also on Twitter, but try me on Insta. Okay. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can connect if you want to be professionally connected or follow me with a lot of articles. And then Hooky Wellness, of course, has its Insta handle as well. So you can get a lot of tips, tricks, and practical things on Hooky Wellness Insta. And then you'd learn more about my personal journey and perspective on Chill Sergeant. And then if you yourself are looking for support, or if you are looking for support for your workplace team, whether it's a functional team, a working team, or even your entire org, you can check out hookywellness.com to learn more about our programming and relief support. It's very tiered and can fit into your life at whatever level you need. So you can set up a discovery call. You can just sign up and buy. But yeah, visit hookywellness.com to learn more about programming and to sign up for our newsletter.
That's amazing.
Oh, and last, to also check if burnout is in your life. We have a pressure gauge to see if burnout's turning up your pressure and if you're ready for the relief journey. So just go to the site and you can do a quick gut check to figure out if there's something there that you need to be aware of, and get some quick tips about what you can do about it.
Yeah, and I would argue that regardless of if somebody deeply identifies with all the physiological elements of burnout or not, the concept of chill and what value they'll get out of your world is definitely going to be meaningful. Do you have a closing thought that you'd like to leave everyone with?
I specifically in the burnout space, burnout is something that Can't happen to anyone. Does happen to everyone, and you can get out of it regardless. It's just part of the journey of, honestly, performance and being an adult and lifing. It's a matter of how to manage it, not avoid it. This is avoiding things that help you learn and grow is not the way we should be of life. So I guess leave you with the formula that I've learned and really the mantra to live by, which is work hard, self-care harder.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Erayna, for being with us. Truly pleasure. I'm grateful for who you are.
Wow. Well, thank you for having me. This was awesome.
And for those of you who got a chance to listen to this story, Erayna just demonstrated that when we are out of alignment in life, when we aren't seen for who we are, pay attention, listen to yourself, and start asking questions as to what got you into this position. What brings you joy? What brings you light? What makes you you? The reality of it is that so many of us have been hidden behind walls of armor for no reason or very justified reasons based on the way our society has been shaped. But the reality of it is that the only way that you'll connect is if you do the work, you go inside and you recognize and listen to your body. It's not about balance. It's about harmony. And it's about finding the light, the love, and the connection that's available to you by allowing yourself to be open to receive and by doing the work that's necessary to heal and grow. All of you have access to what she just talked about, but it requires you to flip open your lid and scan your can. What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.